Steve and Alan's pro tips in a short time. Learn a lot.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, Steve.
So, a busy time of year for you with youth leadership workshops.
Yeah, that's right. It's summertime. I get around, see about 900 to 1,000 students from about 40 different schools over the course of the summer, and we're in full swing.
How many years have you been doing this?
This is year 26 of providing a very similar servant leadership curriculum, but it changes each year based on trends, based on what I'm seeing, based on what I've learned from previous years and what I'm hearing from directors. But yeah, 26 years.
All right. So, what has changed this year or in the last couple of years in particular?
Something huge is students are more willing and better at talking to each other. Students are more willing to talk to each other. Students are getting better at talking to each other. I noticed sort of right post COVID, there's a lot of need for students to feel more comfortable with face-to-face communication. And we did a lot of drill, a lot of practice on that. And that's been something that's ebbed and flowed over the last 26 years. It wasn't just a pandemic thing. There have just been times when that's been more of a need. I'm seeing students being better with each other, like they're almost eager to connect and communicate. That's been kind of cool.
So, what's the implication for teachers if this is a trend among students nationwide?
I think the basic approach to peer leadership is you first build relationships, then you provide encouragement, and then you ask for more. And the thing that's been hard for teachers is to have student leaders who weren't comfortable building relationships with students they didn't know as well. I think that process is going to go better moving forward over the next couple of years. There's a real development of empathy. Like there's a part of the workshop where I start to sell students on how important empathy is, and curiosity, and noticing others. That has not been a tough sell this summer so far. Students have been really interested in connecting and being empathetic more naturally than I've been seeing. It's encouraging. And that's the plus side for the teachers, is that they can count on their student leaders to get to know like the shyer kids or the newer kids better.
So, let's say that I either can't afford your services or I can, but I unwisely choose not to hire you. And I start the beginning of the school year without having had any sort of summer leadership training. Based on what you're discovering here with these changes, these trends, what is something different I might do as a teacher right away from day one?
Pick whichever one of these paths works best for your culture. One, ask your student leaders to have some social get-togethers in the late summer to get to know every member of their section and allow every member of their section to get to know them and each other. Not a lot of groups of 2 or 3, but like everybody together, but make sure that everybody talks to each other. If it's not a part of the culture to ask students to do that on their own time, build time into your rehearsals for some more structured get to know each other activities, more structured icebreakers. Basically, make sure that they're leveraging this desire and this ability and make sure that people feel seen and included and known.
I know that you're the expert on this stuff, but can I share something that has worked for me as far as the icebreakers go?
Yeah, please. You don't sell yourself short, man.
I am bad at predicting what my students will like in terms of those icebreaker activities. So I might go online and find some, and I'll maybe find 5 that I like. And then I send those to a couple of my students and say, hey, which one of these should we use for the first jazz band rehearsal tomorrow? And oftentimes they're like, anything but number 3. We've had to do that one in every class and everyone hates that, or that sort of thing.
Yeah, that totally works. And I'll give you the one that I teach that I think is super simple is have a conversation about someone's name, learn a little bit about home, house, and family, and talk about likes and dislikes in school. Like those 3 topics: name, home, school. That works pretty well as a way to not overthink it or have something super cheesy.
You noticed anything else these last few weeks?
Yes. I think I've noticed that everyone is now getting on the same page at getting back to excellence, working hard, making stuff happen. The last couple of years, I've seen teachers being sort of impatient with students as students needed some time to acclimate and adjust to post-pandemic. Not everybody was getting on board at the same pace. I'm seeing a lot more students who are just all about that. There's still a little impatience from teachers. I do survey all the directors of the students I get to work with. And a common question is, how can I get students to take more initiative and more ownership without me asking them? And my answer remains the same. This thing is timeless. This is going back a couple decades. You have to ask them and let them know that you don't want to ask them in the future. By asking them to do the stuff that you wish they did without being asked, and then tell them the next time they have the chance to do that thing proactively, and then give them feedback on whether or not it happened. But teachers are still pushing for more initiative, and student leaders still don't know exactly what that means. And so I wish teachers would spell that out a little bit more for them, because they're totally willing, but you're being a little vague with your students. So that's my gentle encouragement to directors who want to see more initiative. Have faith they want to provide it. They just need to know from you what exactly that looks like to you.
So I think student leadership in a music education setting is pretty well established in the high school performance ensembles, especially marching band, show choir, some of those outside of the school day things that are just set up a little bit better to have some of those leadership positions as a part, having a dance captain, having drum majors, that sort of thing. If I am a middle school teacher, or even maybe an elementary general music teacher, where we're working on these 21st century skills like leadership, where would we dip our toe in if we are teaching a seventh grade orchestra or even an elementary general music classroom for helping our students develop some leadership skills?
One of the reasons I like the 3 steps is because they're easy to understand and apply from the corporate level all the way down to kindergarten. Build relationships, encourage others, then ask for more. So that even in class, even in a second grade general music class, there can be some getting to know each other. And Steve, it looks like Joni wants to sit next to you. Please let Joni sit next to you and ask Joni how her day was. And so you can just find little ways to build relationships without saying out loud that that's what's happening. And then the second step of encouraging others is part of that needing the need that we all have to be seen. And it's not about praise. It's about letting people know that you're on their side. So that's when the second grade general music teacher can say, Steve, can you help Joni go get the xylophone? Or Joni, show Steve a rhythm that you really like on the xylophone. And that idea of sharing and showing and letting people know that you're like working with each other is helpful. And then the asking for more, I don't think you want to turn second grade general music students into like little bosses of each other, but instead you just make it cool and the norm to help each other put things away and ask each other for it. So Steve, please put away 2 chairs and go over and ask Joni to help you put away chairs also. So you're directing people to ask each other for help in front of each other. So that's the way that I think you can drill down. And if you're just constantly thinking, how can I get my students to build relationships? How can I get my students to be on each other's side? And how can I make it normal for students to like do little bits of work together and ask each other to do it with them? That can work at any level.
Those are great reminders. And, you and I have been friends for decades now, and I have been hearing you espouse these aspects of leadership. And yet, even I, after all these years of hearing it, I still think leadership equals bossy. That being a leader means you have some information and you're telling someone else what to do with it. And I know that that's not the case, but I feel like if that's the default for me, it probably is for a lot of people too. And so this idea that encouraging students to be kind to one another, encouraging students simply to help one another, those are foundational aspects of leadership, and a good reminder for all of us that being a leader doesn't just simply involve telling someone else what they need to be doing.
Yeah, because they usually know. They usually know what they're supposed to be doing, but they don't know what's most important right now. And so that when you get to that point where you're working really hard on something and you get to that asking for more, make it okay for someone to say, hey, here's my pencil. You might want to circle those accidentals. And then if you've started in second grade with helping each other out, and that's why we're doing this, then when you hand somebody a pencil and say, dude, circle the accidentals, playing wrong notes, that just, it's normal and it is helpful. And it still is. I have some information that you don't quite have, and I have some information that will help you be better in this situation. And it's not bossy, it's collegial.
I like this just for my own sake, too, for my collegiate jazz band, where, you can have principal players or section leaders or whatever who are in charge of various things. But that doesn't really fit with me and the culture. And what happens if you got 4 trumpet players who are all pretty good? Like, why pick one of them just to be the boss or in charge? And I like how your suggestions can help me even with collegiate level students where we don't have official leadership positions, but we can still very much A, be helping the students develop these things, and B, making my job easier in the process if I'm doing it right.
There we go. Something we've talked about in previous episodes is saving future Alan or future Steve some work and effort. And I think laying the groundwork with these patterns early on is helpful. And I think they're ready. I have one other thing that I have noticed that I alluded to, but didn't really spell out. And that is there's less of a fear of burnout. Music students are busy students and they do a lot of stuff. And I think that a lot of students have been driven to a point of burnout. This even goes back pre-COVID. I feel like the pandemic reset has helped people understand better how to prioritize their time. And I'm seeing fewer students ask questions about burnout or even using the word burnout. And I'd seen a lot of those in the last 3 or 4 years. So they're ready.
Let's say I can't afford to send my students to your workshop, or I live too far away, or anything like that. But I would like to pick your brain for a half hour on how I can do a little bit better job with student leadership. Can I do that? Will you sell a half hour of your time to talk to me on the phone?
It depends on my schedule. I mean, sometimes my schedule's wide open and I'll talk to anybody about anything, anytime, or just shoot me an email. We'll just set up a time to talk. Much of the year, that's relatively easily done. And then there's times where I would say, we got to wait a couple months. But something that we have promised our listeners, Steve, is the Insider program. And if somebody becomes a Music Ed Insights Insider, there are several perks, but one of them is private FaceTime with Alan and Steve. So that person could pick both our brains because you've got some stuff to offer in this area as well. We're a good team. So I'd encourage someone to become an insider and take advantage of the private Zoom with Alan and Steve.
I, of course, benefited when you came to work with my students at the high school I taught at 20 years ago. But I have benefited even more just from the one-on-one conversations with you since then, where I can say, yeah, Johnny, the drum major, we just are not really getting along very well, and how you kind of would help me sort through some of that stuff. For me, that was even more valuable than watching you work with the students. Ideally, someone could get both.
Yeah, I think so. And again, don't be shy if anybody wants to visit with me, because talking through those situations, did it seem like work to me, or did I seem to enjoy it to a certain extent?
You seem to enjoy it. But I didn't know if that was just because I had a very charming personality or you wanted something from me in return.
All those things can be true at the same time, but really, I love talking through those situations. That brings joy to me. So happy to do it.
Sounds good. Well, best of luck with the remaining youth leadership workshops this summer. Good stuff today, Alan. Thank you.
Yeah, let's touch base again in August and see if these trends hold up.
Steve and Alan's Pro Tips in a Short Time. Learn all.